And my guests are seated. We're going to have a conversation regarding the new voters register brouhaha that's been going on. Codeo is calling for urgent IPAC meeting to resolve impasse. And then also the NDC, others demonstrate in Kumasi against new register. We'll also be discussing the alleged destabilization plot. ACP Agojo has been granted bail finally. And then the depreciation of the Citi. Two eminent persons, Kwame Pinim and then Ishmael Yamson, have asked for the dissolution of the Forex committee in this regard. We're going to look at those stories and then have a conversation, read those stories and then have a conversation. My guests are seated here. I have Gabriella Tetteh, who is spokesperson for the NDC as part of the communication team. Good morning, Gabriella. How are you doing?
Yeah, good morning, fine. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah. This year, is it the first time or second time this year?
First
this year that we have a meeting. Well, it's good. It's good to have you on the panel.
It's good to see you.
Yeah. Well, we'll start a conversation. Let me introduce Fati as well. Fati Abubakar is a communication team member as well of the NPP. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's good to see you.
Same here.
Happy New Year to you too.
Happy New Year.
All right. How are you doing? Everything okay?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm blessed. We are alive and healthy, and that's enough for me.
All right. Fantastic. Well, let me start with you, Gabriella. The new voters register. I mean, NDC has made their position very clear over the period as to what they think about the whole new register issue. I want to just read a couple of stories here, and then we'll go in and have the conversation to help our viewers to give context to the conversation. All right, so group demands, this is on citinewsroom.com, group demands from EC report that recommended new voter register. A group named Taxpayers Union has asked the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Jane Mensah, to provide it with details of programs and activities that led to the decision to compile new voters register. Failure to adhere to the group's request will result in civil action, the group has warned. The EC in December 2019 made public its plans to abandon its current biometric verification system and procure a new one which has facial recognition technology. The EC has also planned to compile a new voters register ahead of the 2020 general election. The union, in a letter it wrote to Jane Mensah, cited by citinewsroom.com, said it is making the request pursuant to Article 21(1)(f) of the Constitution, which directs all persons shall have the right to information. We are of the strongest conviction that all the information surrounding the matter, including particularly the contract and the full report of the external consultants, constitute information that should be made available to every taxpayer and Ghanaians, the union stated in its letter. Let me go on and read the Yempene demo story. The new voters register this is on citynews.com as well. The story here says hundreds of protesters have poured onto the streets of Ashanti regional capital Kumasi to join in the inter-party resistance against the new voters register demonstration. This is 2 out of 3 planned protests aimed at putting pressure on the EC to abort its decision to compile a new voters register ahead of the 2020 elections. The Ashanti region edition of the protest, dubbed Yempene demonstration, which literally means we won't agree, brought together members of parliament, the leadership of allied political parties, former appointees in the previous NDC administration, and ordinary Ghanaians. Okay, they wielded several placards with inscriptions that speak against the electoral body's decision. All right. The final one I want to read quickly here is Kudeo calling for an urgent IPAC meeting to address a new voters register. The Coalition of Domestic Observers says there is an urgent need for the Electoral Commission, stakeholders, including political parties and civil society organizations, to meet and fashion out a way to address the ensuing controversy over the EC's proposed electoral reforms. Kudeo said the move has become necessary following rising tensions between the EC and some political parties. There is an ensuing brouhaha over the EC's decision to compile a new voters register as well as upgrade its election management system. All right, Gabriella, all that's going on. My first question, is NDC ready to sit down within the IPAC to have a conversation to, let's meet and agree to disagree and move on and have a good election 2020?
First of all, good morning to you again. Good morning, Fati, and to your viewers out there. Yes, the NDC is ready to sit and dialogue over the new proposals being made by the EC. As you rightly read, yesterday there was a demonstration, the second out of 3 in Kumasi. After the demonstration, on the platform, the party chairman actually did announce that the IPRA was suspending further demonstrations so they could meet with the advisory council of the EC and dialogue on the way forward. And I think that actually that's the best approach at the moment, because there are too many entrenched positions currently. You have the EC, which is bent on executing this register and all the allied ancillary systems to run this election and subsequent elections. You have opposition parties, the NDC, APC, PSC, and some other political parties. On the other side, who are also opposed to it, you have the current administration who is interested in it. So it appears everybody's position is entrenched. You have civil society organizations who have also now taken a position also against this proposal. So I think that the best approach is to have everybody come back to the table and dialogue and come to a consensus on the best approach moving forward.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, the MPP had a meeting yesterday, and John Boydu says the voter registration is not compulsory. If you want to boycott it. He doesn't care. That looks like a very entrenched position. What's your reaction to this?
So assuming that whoever boycotts it, and then the few who choose to register and go to elections to elect a president, and then you've elected your president, and I tell you that I did not register, I did not vote, so as far as I'm concerned, this your president is not my president. Do you think that will serve this country? It doesn't. Because at the end of the day, we are practicing a democracy, and every voice matters, and every individual matters. So it's not a question of, not a matter of, well, if you want to do it, if you don't want to, don't do it. Fine. There's no compulsive law that says that it's mandatory, do it. You have a choice. But as a political actor, that is not the position you should take. Tomorrow, you present your presidential candidate in December. If he loses, this announcement you've given, there are lots of disenchanted Ghanaians out there. They will listen to you and go like, well, NDC, MPP, all the same. So if we are not usually register, then we register. You live in a country where you have a population of 30 million. You have about roughly half of that who are supposed to exercise adult suffrage. And then you've taken them by choice. You told them, don't vote, don't register. And you are sitting there and only, let's say, a half of that fraction are the ones who are determining who should become president. And the rest are sitting there because, I mean, we shouldn't use those kind of language. I think that he should actually withdraw those words.
Okay. Let me come to you, Fati. I just want to read quickly from the story here on citynewsroom.com. John Boydu was having a conversation on face-to-face with Godfred Akoto-Boafo, who's a presenter here at Citi TV. And he said, whilst demonstrating, the MDC, are also motivating their people to go out there and register. So the good people of this country shouldn't be deceived by this deception. We are waiting for the Electoral Commission to come out with the days and the plan for the movement of their machines and the periods for the registration exercise for us to get ourselves registered. If the NDC believes in what they are saying, they should boycott it when it gets to the registration date. Election or registration is not compulsory in this country. Is it fair for someone of the stature of John Boydu to, in the space where we are trying to build cohesiveness in the country, to make such comments?
Okay, David, good morning. Good morning to my sister and your viewers, and Happy New Year. I believe with respect to this issue on whether or not to have a new voters register, the political parties have entrenched positions. On the side of those who want a new voters register, we have about 13 political parties who are saying that we want a new register. I believe in all the arguments, one thing has been consistent. The New Patriotic Party from 2012 mentioned that the current register is bloated and therefore not fit for purpose. It does not even matter whether we have been able to elect a president out of that register. It's a matter of principle that we seek for the right thing to be done. Because even in the Abu Ramadan case, even the court, the ruling of the court was to the effect that the use of the National Health Insurance card to register people onto the voters' roll was not right, because the cards were not issued based on citizenship. So in all these arguments, it points to one thing. We want a new voters register. And even within this dispensation, we don't speak for the Electoral Commission, but also to speak as advocates of a new voters register. There is also this track record of the NDC trying to discourage or sometimes oppose or advocate against every single reform in our electoral system since 1992. From opaque ballot boxes to transparent ballot boxes, from using thumbprint IDs to photo IDs, from moving from the automated fingerprint to the biometric system. They have consistently opposed those reforms. That is not to say that when the reforms happened, they did not avail themselves to vote. So we are of the opinion that when the NDC says, don't go and register for NHIS, we don't believe it will work, it is supposed to pose these kind of risks, they then go behind your back to go and register. When they say don't register for national identification card, you go to their strongholds and the queues are longer. So with this conversation, I watched the interview last night, and if you listen to it holistically, you also have to take into consideration the kind of audience he was seeking to send that message to. For us in the NPP, we cannot sit and listen to the NDC say we will do everything to make sure we don't get a new voters register and even discourage our people. Mind you, even yesterday, they had a demonstration in our stronghold seeking to discourage our people to turn out. But at the end of the day, they would rather go behind your back and go and register their people. And on 7th December, you see them in the queues. It's also a matter of fact that the right to vote is actually a right and not an imposition that at all costs you have to go and vote and there are penal consequences. But I believe if you look at it simplistically, it was just an aside. But he's seeking to encourage us to go out there to register when the time is right.
How significant is it, do you think, that Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo should say that we are suspending further demonstrations in order to give room for the eminent committee to do their work?
It is. I think it's a good thing. I believe that in the ideal situation, for us to have any reform in course of this process, you would wish we had a consensus that everybody agreed that we need reforms. Those of us who don't have the technical know-how with respect to the operations of the Electoral Commission and the IT experts and the consultants and all of them. But we don't live in an ideal world. And sometimes we have extreme positions that we are not willing to even find gray areas for us to move forward. And in that regard, the best thing is to sit and dialogue. But I want Ghanaians to bear in mind that no single individual or authority knows the challenges of the Electoral Commission more than the Electoral Commission. When we talk about the Electoral Commission, I'm not referring to just the commissioner or the deputies or a few individuals at the top who have been appointed in recent years that you say that they haven't been there for long. There are directors and staff and baseline workers who have been in the system for a very long time. They know what is on the ground. So if these individuals come out to say that, you know what, the technology we've been using from 2011 is obsolete. The equipment at the data center are not good. The manufacturers of the fingerprint scanners and printers are saying we are no longer in production. And even the vendor is saying, STL is saying, I'm going out. If you want us to repair, pay $56 million. And considerably, that's a huge sum of money. Looking at the challenges that the current register had, which have not gone away, so, and as well as other operational challenges that they have identified. So at the end of the day, if they are saying that we don't have the capacity to carry you into a transparent, free and fair election, we know our integrity is at stake, and we want to deliver the kind of results that every Ghanaian will be happy and comfortable with and accept. And you say, no, at all costs, we will not allow you to conduct an election using a new register. The argument on cost has been flawed. The argument on timing has been flawed. Not a single organization or even the NDC who has been... I think so. Because the track record is there. In 2012, we did the registration up to 5th May. I did my registration on 24th April in 2012. They have also projected that they are going to use that same period, April, May, to do the registration. They will do exhibition. The register must be ready 3 months before the elections. They have done it before and they can do it again. Okay. But I'm saying that fundamentally, the challenges that are on the ground, in terms of their technical capacity and all the issues that they've come up with, I believe they know it more than everyone else, in my opinion. And therefore, we should give them the necessary support for them to be able to deliver a credible election in 2020.
Any thoughts? Any further thoughts? I was going to ask you a question, though. As time has gone on, I have noticed something. I suspect that the floating voter demographic of our population is actually growing, which means, by inference, that the entrenched positioned people are also reducing on both sides. What do you think of this direction? Do you think it's a reality that's happening? And therefore, where do we go from here?
Okay, so...
Okay, you hold your thought. We're going to take a short break. We'll come back and then you let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back from that break. The WhatsApp line is +233 550 585832, and the hashtag is Breakfast Daily. Send us your messages. Gabriella Tetteh was giving us her comments before we went on the break.
Yeah, so to respond to some of the issues that Fati raised, the NDC's position is that we're not against the replacement of hardware and the systems at the EC. Okay. That's what they want to do. well, there are suggestions that if it's about issues of storage, then they look at expansion of their drives and not going out for an entire new procurement. If it's about the data center, there are options of they considering the Accra data center, for example. They've come up with all kinds of reasons to counter that suggestion also, well within their remit. Our position at the moment is on the register itself.
Yeah.
All right. Ancillaries, hardwares, management systems is not of main concern right now. But that aside, in the past few days, there have been reports that the EC has already started giving out contracts to companies like Persils on aspects of the data management system. Yeah, that as an electoral commission, you work together with stakeholders. You cannot have an election in isolation. And elections, especially when it comes to elections that elect presidential and parliamentary candidates, the considerations are much more deepened than when you are electing for district assembly and unit committee members. Because these ones, the stakes are much higher, even though one will argue that in terms of the actual deployment, it's more challenging with the district assembly elections because you are appointing so many people. But that's a different argument. For the presidential and the parliamentary, if you observed consistently every 4 years that we go for an election, the final lap is always a tense year for the country. Going into this election, with this new system that they are seeking to install, put up, you didn't even advertise the requirements of your system. You didn't inform your stakeholders about it. And stakeholders, I mean the parties who actually put up presidential candidates and parliamentary candidates. You didn't engage them on the specifications of this software. You didn't engage them when you were putting out the application for expression of interest. You didn't engage them when you even pre-qualified.
But the EC would argue that they are not beholden to anyone, according
True,
to the Constitution.
but there has to be an element of transparency. Because if consistently, whenever we're going into an election, and the argument always is, from Afrajan's time, since I was a little girl, the argument always is, and the EC is trying to help the incumbent government stay in power, and the EC is doing this, and the EC is, I mean, every single year that we go into an election cycle, it always comes up. So why don't we try and have a different approach where everything is transparent? Anyway, then you are going to give out your own contracts, agreed. But if you allow your stakeholders in, so everybody, okay, this is the companies that are shortlisted. When we did ABCD, this is the ones we are going with. Fair enough. I think that it's only fair, and it also eases down the tension. Now, on the issue of whether the quote-unquote middle ground is softening on both sides, that's a very interesting question because I don't see it really happening in the NDC. I mean, the NDC's support base is very entrenched. If you look at data from our past elections, 1992 to date, there's always this about 38-42% that is consistently voting NDC. There's this 10% middle ground, 20% middle ground that we always have to try and convince. And those are mostly middle class and intelligentsia demographics. Since the last rebranding in 2008, if you observed, we have a lot more people from academia, middle class, who transitioned to the NDC. When a new NDC, the new NDC that was branded under Professor Mills and former President Mahama as candidates. Currently, the challenge with the voter population, as a social science person, when you talk to people from observation, I think that the real problem is not about the ideology, but it's about the outcomes of the government, the successive governments. And for example, 2016, they won with a margin of over 1 million votes. There were people who from NDC side who actually voted for NPP because they also wanted a change. 3 to 4 years down the line, when you talk to people about their aspirations and what their expectations were from the government, you can tell that, the responses are that people have just lost interest in this government because the performance of the government has been very abysmal. They're very heavy on promises, but very short on deliverables. And even the deliverables, the actual, when you go to the ground, for example, let's take something like free SHS. It's a wonderful, I have friends who completed JSS, and for a long time, they've not been able to go back into school. It wasn't because their grades were bad, but actually because of financial constraints in those families. Today, every child after GSS has an opportunity to go to secondary school. I think that it's a wonderful program. However, in the implementation, you have inadequate infrastructure, so that poses its own challenges to the sector. In the same implementation, you have a computer placement system, which last year, for example, we're also in the news.
So you feel that all these things are lending themselves to disappointment?
And then there's also, when you deploy policies and people are not beneficiaries to those your policies, they always feel marginalized. If I don't have a child going to secondary school, how do I appreciate free SHS? All right. If I'm not into agribusiness and into agriculture, how would I appreciate planting for food and jobs? My benefit to planting for food and jobs would be that when I go to the market, I should see impact to the market. I should see low prices for more commodities.
You're saying there's no impact?
And I'm not saying, I see a lot more in data and in reports than the actual market.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I'm not sure if you want to make any comments on this, but I think we can move on. Let's move on to the...
I have a quick comment about...
Okay, make it quickly and then let's move on to
in just a minute, about the fact that people are disappointed in this government. I believe that is just speculation fueled by NDC propaganda. It is not supported by any statistics I know. There has been several polls, even research by a lot of institutions, as to public confidence, whether they believe President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo or former President Mahama is better seated to lead this country. This University of Ghana Political Science Department, they came up with some research. There are other institutions that have come up with some research. It's all out there in the public. And they have consistently showed that the people are more confident in Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo than President
2020 is here with us, so we'll soon find out. All right, let's get on to the next conversation, the alleged destabilization plot. I'm going to read for you a story from page 3 of the Daily Graphic. ACP Agojo granted bail, 500,000 Ghana Citi bail. Assistant Commissioner of Police, ACP Dr. Benjamin Agojo, the man charged with abetment of treason felony, was granted 500,000 Ghana Citi's self-reconnaissance bail yesterday by an Accra High Court. The court, presided over by Justice Charles Ekor-Baden, asked accused to report twice to the IGP, twice a week to the IGP for 3 months and once a week to the Bureau of National Investigation, the BNI, as well. The judge also ordered ACP Dr. Agojo to deposit his passport with the registrar of the High Court. The registrar of the High Court, the judge stated, shall submit copies of the order to the IGP. Counsel for the applicant, Mr. Martin Pebu, filed an affidavit for bail in December of 2019 and argued that his client was entitled to bail under the 1992 Constitution. In opposing the application for bail, Mrs. Hilda Craig, a senior state attorney, stated that the accused was likely to get in the way of police and military personnel who would testify against him. Ruling on the bail application, the court said that it was of the considered view that the prosecution led by the Attorney General has failed to give facts and evidence to support the claim that ACP Dr. Agojo would interfere with investigation if granted bail. All right. I don't know what comments you have. Fati, let me begin with you on this one regarding the current state of affairs.
You know, first of all, since the Martin Pebu case, we don't have anything like unbailable offences in Ghana. You know, Section 96, subsection 7 of Act 30 had listed a number of offences of which the judges did not even have discretion to consider bail. So with the repeal of that section, every offence in this country is bailable. Except that they have to look at some considerations under Section 96.4 to Section 96.6 with regards to conditions of bail and other considerations that the judges would have to look up to. But that is not to say that the substantive case has been dispensed with. But I believe the judge believes he is supposed to be granted bail, so that's fine. They will therefore proceed to look at the substantive case, which I believe we have competent lawyers at the Ages Department to see to it that the prosecution presents a good case.
Gabriella, I, if I'm not mistaken, this will probably be one of the first time ever in our history that treason felony has been granted bail. I know that Martin Pebu, who's the lawyer on this case, was also the one who, went to fight in the Supreme Court to get these peculiar offences, non-bailable offences, to be, struck out. How significant is this, in terms of a milestone in our practice of law in this country?
I think every first is always significant because it's always a litmus test as to whether the position that one has taken is actually the right or the wrong. I mean, beyond treason, I think the other offenses like drugs and other crimes. But, we don't have many treasonable cases in this country compared to other offenses. So I'm not a lawyer, first of all, and secondly, my knowledge about law is very limited, unlike Fati. So I will speak from a layman's knowledge of this matter. And I think that, as I said, every first attempt at anything is always a good test to try a law and see. This individual actually, being a security officer, I mean, and he's under the custody also of the security elements. They know where he lives, they know everything about him. So I believe it's not a high-risk person that he'll run away or anything like that. You know where to find him. Yeah. And he also knows what the law is. So I expect that.
I guess the issue really was not necessarily whether he'll run away or not, but I do know that the report also said that his passport has been confiscated. But the issue was more, because he's a senior officer, the issue was more of influence on possible witnesses and so on. And that was the concern that the lawyers had.
in more advanced jurisdictions, you have the person on bail, all right, but then you also have extra security measures in place to make sure they monitor where they go and who meets with them and who they contact. I don't know full details or very well what they've put in place regarding this matter.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't exist, I'm sure that they'll probably consider, or they should consider, to put the public at ease that he will not be under any, he will not get any extra benefits. Okay. That an ordinary Ghanaian, should he or she be in the same situation, will not be given just because he's a senior police officer.
Okay, all right. Let's go to our last story, and it's regarding the Forex Committee. And the story here says, I'm going to read from the Daily Graphic, it's page 20 of the Daily Graphic. I'll start with you, Fati, on this one. I'll start with you, Gabriella, on this one. Pianim Yamson want dissolution of Forex Committee. Two senior citizens have called on the government to dissolve the Foreign Exchange Development Committee that was inaugurated on January 13th this year to review the country's foreign exchange regime, identify constraints, and offer workable alternatives that can reduce the risks to the economy. Mr. Kwame Pianim, an economist and a leading member of the NPP, and Mr. Ishmael Yamson, a management consultant and a former board member of the Bank of Ghana, told the Daily Graphic in separate interviews yesterday that the dissolution was necessary to ensure that Ghana did not waste time and resources to undertake an exercise that the BOG was already undertaking. According to them, beyond the fact that the committee was needless, its terms of reference were in conflict with the constitutional mandate of the BOG, which is the statutory body in charge of currency and financial stability in the country. Let me read a little further. Mr. Pianim, an octogenarian, and Mr. Yamson, a septuagenarian, were sharing their views on the FX committee, which a deputy minister of finance, Mr. Charles Edubuahen, inaugurated last week. The committee is chaired by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Ken Oforiatta, and has its members drawn from key sectors of the economy. The Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Alan Chermanteng, Minister of Food and Agriculture, Dr. Owusu-Efri Akoto, and the first Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Maxwell Opoku Afari, are among the members of the committee. All right. So these eminent members of our society are saying it's not necessary. BOG is already doing this. You're only creating another avenue to waste more money for the country. What are your thoughts?
They are experienced economists and business people. One is a financial consultant. He has a strong background in economics. The other one was once chief executive, I think, chairman of Unilever, and that's a conglomerate. Yes. So I don't take their words lightly if they think that this is another talk shop that's going to present a report that will not be far-reaching. I think that, you see, this committee, to be honest with you, I think that this should not have been done by the Minister for Finance. Actually, this should have been done by the Vice President, because it is taking, it's like a multi-sectorial, trying to find a multi-sectorial solution to a problem. One of those is Bank of Ghana. So the Bank of Ghana then becomes a player, same as finance, same as trade, agric, and all these other actors. Because if you put it from an economic management point of view, purview, they will not actually have this to say. Because then again, whatever recommendations come from that, it's automatic that the various sectors that operate within the economic management model, as others are going to implement it. The Bank of Ghana being one, finance being the other, agriculture being another, trade being another, etc., etc. But really, we've had so many committees already. We already know what the challenges are with our currency.
Yeah.
We are an import-dependent country, and we are an emerging economy. So naturally, we have a huge consumption for good taste, and most of that is not produced here. All right? The solution is for us to work out how are we going to bring in more foreign currency. Bottom line, because we don't print US dollars here. We have to engage in some activity that will earn us dollars.
Yeah.
Import substitution. We've been talking about import substitution since I was in GSA Social Studies. We've been making so much noise about rice here. Almost hardly does a week go by that we don't discuss rice here. Fantastic policy. And the idea I showed you how long it's taking for us to even come this far.
Yeah.
I was reading an article, one of the reports from 2019. That's that they've increased rice production to about over 700,000 metric tons. Now, if our import is around the region of 800,000 metric tons, that means that we are almost close to equalizing what our import bill is in terms of volumes. So what stops between the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Agric to now cut down on the importation of rice by 25%, knowing very well that we want to ban importation of rice by 2023.
Yeah.
This is 2020. By now, we should start moving on making that policy achievable.
Okay.
When we're in office, in the NDC, for example, let's take poultry. When the currency started fluctuating because of the challenges in the external environment and our own domestic challenges, for poultry importers, what we did was that before we allow you to import poultry, you have to show proof that you are going to take 30% local content. And you prove which poultry farm is supplying that 30% before you are giving your license to bring in your 70%.
Okay.
Because we are trying to make the country, again, self-dependent in poultry production. If you look at their program, they have a program called Planting for Export. I think that is also another laudable program. Because when you go into horticulture, things like chili, spices, have a huge demand outside. All right? It's a good market. It's a good initiative. It will end the country export if we can scale it up. But we don't want another situation where they'll come and tell us that they've created another job program, agricultural program, and then the only proof we have is in reports, but on the actual grounds is something else.
Okay. Just a quick comment. I want you to comment on this. The NDC MP, John Poko, has refused to join the committee, even before the committee's work takes off. It's a story on citynewsroom.com here. It says a member, Benjamin Podo, MP for Ho Central, declined the invitation to be part of the committee, arguing that he did not consent to his name being added to the list. Do you have any comments on this?
Well, was he nominated by the minority, or the group just decided that they'll single him out and pick him and add him to their committee?
So maybe he has special expertise that would help.
I don't know about that one. But then I also want to make another final. This government also has a huge appetite for borrowing in foreign currencies. Now, when you borrow excessively in any currency, you have to pay back those monies in those currencies. And most of those loans are in dollar-denominated loans. Even our Eurobonds are dollar-denominated bonds. Because every time you are paying these, it's foreign currency moving out.
Okay.
So, again.
Let me have... so, what are your thoughts, Fati?
Interesting. We have, as a people, always advocated for government to always include stakeholders. Bring people in, talk to the public, let them know what's going on. when it matters most, stakeholder consultation. Make sure the public is in the know. Make sure everybody who matters is in the know. That is what we've been advocating for. And when steps are taken in that direction, sometimes we say, oh, too many committees, what are they supposed to do? First of all, when this conversation came up, it came at the back of a fake story that was saying that the finance ministry has set up a committee to look into the depreciation of the cedi. That was based on a fake story. It was false. Because this committee, yes, I'm coming to that. This committee was not set up with the mandate of looking into the depreciation of the cedi or resolving resolving same.
Let me just quickly read this. Okay, so there's a story on citynewsroom.com which is titled 6 Things to Know About the Forex Development Committee, and number 5 says the Forex Committee will make recommendations. The committee's mandate is to review, assist, and provide recommendations on how to improve management, transparency, and the long-term structure of Ghana's foreign exchange flows.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So this is a situation whereby there is a standing committee known as the Economic Policy and Coordinating Committee. That standing committee is not just by the Ministry of Finance. It's made up of the Statistical Service, the Controller and Accountants General Department, the Finance Ministry, BOG. It's a standing committee. It's an advisory committee to government. This committee came up with, okay, let's form an ad hoc committee. Give them some limited or specific mandates because they are stakeholders within the foreign exchange markets. Okay. Even including those in the informal sector. Because, mind you, the pool from which, as you mentioned, there was even a member of parliament from the minority side. Yeah. The pool of people who were brought together to form the Foreign Exchange Development Committee were from the banks, importers, civil society organization, IT experts, and so on and so forth. That's why the list is that wide. Yeah. This is not like members. Yes, this is not like a working committee for government sitting on some allowance or benefiting from largesse or anything. This is more or less like an ad hoc committee that is to serve as a stakeholder platform for some conversation relating to some specific issues. But
a leading member of the MPP, Kwaku Sakyi, says that all you're doing is duplicating the work of the BOG and giving more people expenses, an expense list where we'll pay for the IT.
Let me tell you something. I watched the entire interview with Mr. Kwame Pieni. If a journalist asks you, what is your opinion about a committee set up to look into the depreciation of the cedi? What do you expect his answer to be? I'm saying that the committee is not to look into the depreciation of the cedi. And the first story that came out did not premise that conversation in the right perspective for us to take it up from there. Right. Okay. And because of that, the subsequent conversations were about depreciation of the cedi, which made the entire conversation misplaced. But the mandate of the committee really...
Unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, we've run out of time, unfortunately. Well, thank you very much. I'll be speaking with Fati Abubakar, who is a communication member of the MPP, with the government communication team, and then also with Gabriella Tetteh, who is a communication team member of the NDC. Thank you very much for watching this segment of the show.
Hi, I hope you enjoyed the show. Do not forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share with your friends. This is Breakfast Daily on Citi TV.
Join the Breakfast Daily team Monday through Fridays from 7:30 a.m. to 10. Join us for breakfast daily, only on Citi TV.